WSVSU News. Mark Drinkall here, reporting with a breaking development. FIDA has just announced they're in the process of hiring a new CEO. The famous Joan Rockingham is being announced for the position, and this brings an interesting dilemma to the board of directors. To help us better understand the nature of the problem, we now take you live to the home of Philosophy 205 student Tanya Drinkall. Tanya, what can you tell us about the situation developing?
A 46%, but I studied for hours. There goes my GPA. To be or not to be? That is the real question. Oh, hello. So, FIDA, this is what I know about FIDA. Farouk is a board member of the Foundation of International Development in the Americas, which we know as FIDA. FIDA is a very large international nonprofit, non-government organization that funds local development groups in Central and South America. They raise these funds by asking for help from North America and Europe. FIDA is in the process, as you know, of hiring a new chief executive officer, and the infamous Joan Rockingham is almost a perfect candidate for this. She has a tremendous record of accomplishment in raising funds for these development organizations. And she's told the search committee that she could raise the revenue by $5 million this year. However, her asking salary is 3 times the amount of the outgoing executive. And FIBL, being a global justice organization, has an unwritten policy that no one makes more than 3 times the salary of the lowest paid individual. And the salary she's asking for is 9 times that of the cleaning staff. So our question is, should Farouk vote to hire Joan? Well, before we look at the ethics and the philosophy of this case, the case itself is missing some valuable information. The first of which is, what is the company's current revenue? Is $5 million a large amount of money, or is $5 million common to this type of company? So Joan's request for a larger salary because of this $5 million, what impact does that have on the company? We don't know. The other question we have is, what was the salary of the previous CEO? Was the previous CEO not making enough for a CEO? That can happen in nonprofits where you have a CEO making below the federal poverty level because they believe in the work. Is Joan simply asking for a fair salary? The other question that we need to deal with is the volunteers. Are there volunteers in this organization? And if they are there, they make nothing by definition, and therefore this unwritten policy with Joan's salary might not be as set in stone.
Who is making the decision?
The decision rests squarely upon Farouk and the board.
And whose interest should be considered?
The organization itself, the people that they are trying to help, the donors, and Farouk.
Would you say that we have a problem with ethical egoism?
There is that possibility. Joan Rockingham is aware of the fact that she's asking for a large salary, and she's justifying it by saying she'll increase the revenue. However, if we look at utilitarianism, in which we're trying to aggregate the maximum amount of happiness with everyone involved, the people that we've listed, we kind of have a catch-22 here. So if we give her a higher salary, then the aggregate happiness is lower because there's less money going to the organization itself. There's less money going to the people that they're helping. There's less money going to the other employees, even though there's more money going to Joan. So that's one problem. But if we look at it the other way and we give Joan a higher salary and she's able to increase the revenue by $5 million, that $5 million has the potential of giving more money to the organization, more money to the people that they're helping, more money to the other employees.
Perhaps then indirect utilitarianism is a better approach?
Let's take a look at a couple of other ethical theories. This unwritten policy of salary shares is employing a type of difference principle. And if you remember, the difference principle is such that the least person is not too far well off than the best person in the line of resource distribution. So should that be upheld? I say no. I feel that it should not be upheld. One of the weaknesses of this principle is inflation. If any senior member of a team receives a raise, then everyone else must receive a raise, and that does not lead to conservatism. We can conserve by utilizing volunteers who make nothing and advocates who are willing to work for less because they believe in the cause. That leads us to virtue ethics. Now, virtue ethics tells us that the work that is being done tells us about the character of the people doing the work. It is important to them that these people be helped. As a nonprofit, by definition almost, it's a virtue-based organization. And the characters of the individuals working here are more likely oriented towards improving the life of others at some expense to themselves even. So this information may change our economic view of the situation. Are we willing to pay more for one individual in an effort to increase the gain to others?
What would you say about the rights and duties of the organization?
We can see a conscience duty unfolding here. The organization, if they are transparent with their donors about how funds are used, can increase or maintain the donations that they receive. However, many donors may shy away from giving to this organization if they feel the overhead is too high. On the other hand, if FIDA can show that this investment in this one individual increases the gains by $5 million, that could increase, again, more donations from these donors. Could go well for them.
Are there any more specific rights and duties?
The board has a legitimate expectation that they will guide the organization to do the most good. So a poor decision here could reflect badly on Farouk and the board.
With all of these considerations, how then should Farouk vote? Or, to answer our question, should Farouk vote to hire Joan?
No, I propose that Farouk actually abstain from voting altogether in pursuit of due diligence, citing the legitimate expectation the board has to make proper decisions.
This is interesting.
Yes, if Joan is an ethical egoist to the point that she will not concede to working with a progressive salary, and here's my proposal. If Joan believes that she can make $5 million in revenue, she should be then willing to make the same salary as the outgoing executive until that revenue is reached. So as she increases revenue, she increases salary. However, if an ethical egoist will not agree to that, then she's likely to have other problems that ethical egoists have. She might not cooperate in the workplace. This can lead to a negative work environment and can be exceptionally volatile in a nonprofit organization. Character issues can weigh just as heavily as economics in the minds of donors. To make matters simple, I would like to propose that FIDA operate with the economic principle that ought implies can. Looking at our discussions of all these considerations, FIDA has a legitimate duty to its donors to be diligent in their decision making. In other words, they ought to look further into this. If they ought to look into it, then they can look into it further, and no employee, current or prospective, should thwart this process.
Thank you very much for your time. Well, there you have it, folks. FIDA ought to take extra measures here in all the interests that are involved. Stay tuned tomorrow evening as we provide up-to-the-minute coverage of this fascinating story.